Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is February 8th, 2012. This is the Day 9 Daily. It is the 415th Day 9 Daily, and it's time to learn to be a better gamer. Ah, yeah! Now, in the last several dailies, it's been mainly some protoss focus. So I wanted to do something not protoss focused. But we're going to be doing a protoss daily today. We're going to be doing how to deal with Mutalisks in Protoss versus Zerg. One of my ever so favorite problems to be solving because it feels like something that should have a solution, but it feels tricky. And tricky, seemingly impossible to crack problems are my absolute favorite. And as a matter of fact, in the feedback for just general strategy requests, the number 2 most requested things are how to deal with Mutalisks and how to stop the 1-1-1. And since only one of those is possible to stop, we're going to be focusing on the Mutalisks. I'm so sneaky. For any of you who didn't know, the streamathon for Reckoning yesterday was awesome-tastic. The wonderful and lovely Felicia Day came by my house because she's like the nicest person in the universe. She works like 1 billion hours a day and was still like, yeah, I'll swing by. I'll totally help you make a character. Which is why the character kicks so much ass. The character's name was Carrot Pouch. Yes! And of course, did mad non-stop battling. And for any of you who want to buy Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, I would suggest definitely buy it, but I encourage you to run to harder areas. The first area feels a little easy, and it's a really long area if you try to do everything. I think it's like 20 hours of content in the first area. So I just ran right past that to some plains that was really scary, and that made it so fun! So do that. Freaking do that. All those videos are up on dat internets right now, so it should be up on Blip. And one brief request to the admins before we step in, if you'd be so kind as to just let me know how the stream quality is doing throughout. That would be fantastic, because for any of you archive viewers who didn't know, I tried to start the stream multiple times, and then it went down. Thank God SOPA didn't pass, because instead of it being something like Windows Automatic Update trying to restart my computer, it could be forces of evil. So everything's actually dandy, nothing evil did occur, and it's time to talk about Protoss versus Zerg. Here we go. Coffee is amazing. Oh crap, what's the obvious thing I didn't announce? Yes, that's right, the After Hours Gaming League Week 4 coming up after this. It's Facebook versus the Geek Squad. Oh yeah. Now I'm gonna go do the daily. Let's talk about Zerg versus Protoss, and all that good shit. In the Zerg vs. Protoss matchup, traditionally, the way that the Zerg vs. Protoss matchup looks is that the Zerg player is trying to get around 3 bases quickly, because the Protoss early expanded, and the Zerg is trying to rely on a huge amount of roaches to both defend against any mid-game push, and of course to attack back if Protoss shows any sign of weakness. It's a very much so one of these sorts of styles of play. Defend, 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 defend. The Mutalisking style has become a very popular alternative to this, where you're really sort of bringing the action back to Protoss and making him kind of have to maybe feel like he's doing one of these things. So, of course, Protoss players who are ordinarily used to dealing with the army in one big ball, used to dealing with a Roach Hydra force, suddenly have Mutalisks over here and Zerglings running this way. Or even if you're against really good players, the Mutalisks are just splitting up and sweeping around. Counterattacks are a problem. Even the base trade can be an issue. But most importantly, the biggest issue of all that Protoss players will face is that it feels impossible to position your army correctly. If I leave 10 stalkers behind to defend my main base, suddenly he swings in with a whole bunch of Mutalisks and just kills my stalkers. It's not like Reaper Harass, where if you have a unit there, you can just kill off the Reaper no problem. They bring in 30 Mutalisks, and it's way scary. So in this game, what we're going to look at is a little bit about some of the basics of the opening that these players are doing, but more importantly, we're going to be looking at the positioning of their armies later on. So if you want to learn Mutalisk play and you want to be a Mutalisker, Dimaga will show you how this game. If you want to learn to be an anti-Mutalisker, which is the main topic of the daily, keep watching, because Hero's going to show us how. Let's hop into that game. In the bottom right, we have Liquid Hero, who is one of my all-time favorite players, and just crops up a lot because I have access to his games. We have MTW Dimaga up in the top left, and he's just awesome. One of the things that I would say about Dimaga that's kind of unusual is that he actually has been doing Mutalisks for way longer than it has been a big trend. Like, he is one of the first people to ever do it in the beta, to experiment with it when Roach Hydra was becoming popular again. And so he has a ton of experience doing this sort of thing. So I'm always pumped to see how he does his stuff. So Liquid here is going to open up with a pretty typical early expand. I'm not going to go through many of the laws of how we do our early expand, other than to note that the only big shift protosses are doing is getting their forge way early nowadays, often at 13. Just to do something like Cannon Rush against an early expander, as well as defend against a 6 pool. Dimaga does do the pool, then hatch type of opening. And at this point, I would note that your average everyday Zerg player, well, actually I should say your average everyday Zerg strategy would be to expand to a third, sometimes planting here, more often than not expanding here or here, just getting a third up. But you'll notice that here and here are far away. On maps where it's difficult to get a third base up, that's where Mutalisk play tends to become quite popular. Yeah. Yep. Take 2 shots. I know many of you play the Day 9 drinking game. And for any of you who weren't in the mood to play it today, I apologize. Because I will punish you. Nice. Double Assimilator coming up. Nothing too spectacular here. But one of the big things that I would note right now is that I have told you flat out, straight up, Dimaga is gonna go Mutalisks off 2 bases. I have told you this. And yet we see a extractor. Just one. Or perhaps an extractor, if you want to get all grammatical. This is, I think, very important. A lot of players seem to neglect the fact that the real core of any Zerg strategy is having a ton of drones collecting resources. Not necessarily just minerals, but I mean drones collecting stuff, period. If you want to build a lot of drones, you must not get too much gas early on because you won't have the minerals to be able to support that. So already I'm digging it. Already I'm feeling it quite a lot with our good friend Dimaga. Not over-focusing on it too much. And the other thing that I'd want to note is that Dimaga does get 3 queens quite early. Right off the bat, we're going to see some excessive creep spread. And, of course, plenty of droning. Right when the layer starts, easy signal of when it's time to get all the extractors. So we have a very basic structure for what we want to do. 6 Zerglings are on the map, but they're just doing things like repelling the Zealot, getting a little bit of control of the map. I like to leave some Zerglings behind to begin wailing away at these rocks, which you see that Dimaga has begun to do a teensy-peensy poochy bit of. So that's good. But I mean, other than that, it's a pretty typical situation that we see. Liquid Hero is going to be doing a faster Stargate opening, and I don't care that much about this. I don't really care that much about this, because this is not the important thing. And I will talk a little bit more about that in a sec, but I just want to note that no matter what opening you do, whether you're going to go for this kind of Stargate build, or whether you're going to go for fast Blink Stalkers, or fast 4 Warp Gates, or any of that jazz, the opening is not what lets you beat Mutalisks. It's decisions you make in the mid-game, and decisions you make kind of after you start seeing the Mutalisks that are really the important ones. I think this is important to note for 2 reasons. First of all, I don't want you to abandon what style you like, most importantly, but also what style you're used to. No reason to take all that sort of information, just go and pour it out onto the ground and start over fresh. So no worries about that. The second thing, and here's the critical idea with Mutalisks. We've just seen a Spire get started. Haha. There it is. Just seen a Spire get started. And we haven't talked about the Mutalisks yet, but what I will still note is that what makes Mutalisk tricky is that it is not just get this unit and you're done. It doesn't work that way. It's so easy to think of something like, I'm having trouble with roaches. And someone says, are you getting enough force fields? Are you building immortals? Someone says, I'm having trouble with huge marine armies. Are you getting Storm and Colossus? There's these clean, straightforward solutions to it. Mutalisks don't really work that way, and we're going to see this crop up a lot. It ends up being far more about positioning, a lot of expanding, and I'll even expand on the notion of positioning. I gotta choose some different damn words. Let me see how many. Let me see how many times in 3 sentences I can use expand and positioning in different ways and still manage to remain as confusing as possible. Let's do that one more time. Positioning is really important with Mutalisks, not just where your army is idly, but being able to make decisions based upon dynamic positioning. Like, oh, I see his Mutalisks are over there. Time to make a decision over here. Or, you know, if his Mutalisks are held down here under your chair, it's time to do some sort of battling up at the ceiling of the map, right? You want to be doing a lot of judgment along the fly based on what you see. And that's another thing we're going to look at quite a lot. Hero's going to be jumping into certain positions, and he's going to see a certain area of space with nothing going on. And that's going to be some really key information. And of course, don't be scared of the mutas. Don't be scared of the mutas. So let's go ahead and pop into the mid-game. We're going to go ahead and stop when we're around the 13-minute mark or so to take a break for part 1. There's the Spire going down. And I honestly actually have no idea how long part 1 has been going on for, so I guess that's what happens when we're trying to do tech problem solving before the daily. I can't just stop at 7:20. Alright, cool. Dimaga is going to be clearing out this extra expansion. At this point in time, the only Zerglings that we've really built are as our Spire is around halfway done. And I want you to note that that's a nice relative timing. We don't say something like, look up at the food at 68. That's kind of a non-intuitive timing. It doesn't make sense why 68 is special. But when our Spire's halfway done, that makes a little bit more sense to me, because that's another way of saying, hey, my economy's already starting to get pretty good thus far. I've droned up enough to get all my 4 geysers, because I'm already going for a Spire. So when that's half done, I'll poop out some Zerglings. Now, one thing that I will almost immediately note is that Hero has yet to really get a good sense of what Dimaga is doing. Hero did get a fairly substantial bit of information earlier on by not seeing a third too soon. I actually should note this scouting that happens right about here. We're just going to zip through this. A third base should crop up by 5 minutes. So there's no third here. Here's the 5-minute mark. That's when a third should be up. Yep, okay, there's no third. Let's go ahead and build a pylon here. This probe checked for a third. Ba-dum-bum-ba-dum. And there's no third. Huh. Now, this probe may get in there. It may not get in there. But the important thing is that he checked all the places where a third expansion could be, and there's just no third. That is a huge bit of information. He's going to base something, one of which can be Mutalisk. Already helping us. Love it, love it. Also, you might be saying, what if he has Zerglings with speed that kills off my probe? From the moment the Zerg starts a geyser to the moment Zergling speed ends, that period of time is 3 minutes. Very useful timing to know. If I'm scouting in his base, and my probe dies at 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and I have seen no geyser go down yet, he cannot have speed until 6 minutes and 30 seconds. So I'm free to send probes however the hell I want. Very useful bit of knowledge. Fortunately, he just gets to walk right the hell in there and just sees everything that's going on. No problem. And of course, you're still seeing kind of aggressive scouting. Pylon here, getting some probes into some positions. Trying to do some pushing with zealots. So this makes a lot of sense for Hero to assume something like he must be going for 2-base something or other. Maybe a big 2-base roach attack. Maybe for Mutalisks. Maybe for infestors or something like that. But either way, we're going to see Hero just plant down 4 gateways total. Very normal thing to do. Poke and prod and try to get a sense of what's going on. He sees a 3rd base down, and he just scouts in for the Spire. Pretty clean, pretty simple. So, already, I want to note how much important stuff happened with scouting. We started with some really clever deductions and then we just looked at what he fucking did. Scouting actually should be about that easy in 99% of circumstances, where you list a range of possibilities, and you just check for which one it is when you can. The one thing I don't want you to do is to try to just go straight to the end, where you're just checking. You know, I don't want you to do something like, well, damn, he could be doing anything. Well, I have phoenixes now. Time to scout around the map. A spire! I don't want you to do that. I want you to at least list some stuff. Like, no 3 base is the biggest thing you can say in the early game. 2 base or 3 base. Again, the 2 biggest categories. And then, yeah, so here, Liquid Hero. I don't really know what he's doing. I'm going to send my stuff in. It should be like an infestation pit or a spire. And then he just waltzes in. Another really useful thing to know, 10 minutes is about the earliest Mutalisks can surface in the game. If you are in a 3-digit time, such as 9 minutes and 22 seconds, don't worry about the mutas. Don't worry. Ain't nothing to fret or frazzle-dazzle about. Yeah. Now, Hero is doing this kind of early expand type of thing. I like doing this on this map. I just like taking early thirds with protoss in general. Hero is going to be, you know, doing a little poking and prodding with the Phoenix Void Ray composition. Most importantly, he's going to get Blink right off the bat, and he's going to be getting some Phoenixes off the bat. I don't want you to think in terms of direct counters. Does the Phoenix counter the Mutalisk? Phoenixes will help in small numbers, but Phoenixes actually suck against Mutalisks in large numbers. They are terrible in large numbers against mutas. So Hero is going to be just making a couple more Phoenixes because he's taking a 3rd base. And the path from here to here is long by ground, but it's a really, really manageable distance by air. So, if you are going for a very fast Blink Stalker build in your style, you don't need to suddenly get Phoenixes. If you are going for some sort of air style, like Hero is, you can throw in some extra Phoenixes. I don't think it's necessarily essential to do. I think that given the situation that Hero put himself in, by taking this fast 3rd, probably ends up being pretty important. Now, some interesting things that I want to note right now. We'll probably go ahead and take a break in about a minute. Hero adds on some cannons. All around, good stuff. And we're going to see this basic mixture from Hero doing a lot of good stuff defensively. He's just going to have a Zealot Sentry mix right by his expansion. There has not been a single Stalker produced for Hero at this point in time. Again, a little unusual. We ordinarily don't see a player building this many Phoenixes. But these Phoenixes ain't going to be around long. They're actually not going to serve as big a purpose for quite some time. We're getting a lot of upgrades. This is already one of the big decision points I want to emphasize. We're starting to get a ton of upgrades. And we're slowly going to start accumulating Stalkers. But before we go to the break, get out of your head the idea that the more Stalkers, the merrier. I think the biggest mistake that someone makes at this point in time is to say, aha, he's going mutas, I'm only making Stalkers from here on out. Woo! Only making Stalkers. I want you to think like Goldilocks. Not too many, not too little. You want to be just right. You want just the bare minimum of Stalkers. I guess bare minimum isn't very Goldilocks-like. Goldilocks in school got D minuses, and only that. It was just right. Not too good a grade, but not too low. Don't get too many Stalkers, because then you run the risk of having a really predictable army that doesn't really do all that much. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about that concept and get into the real juicy, juicy, meaty, tasty stuff of holding off Mutalisks. Yeah!